Welcome to the Contagious Code podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome. I am Tejas Kumar, and I've been building on the web for over 20 years at places like Brazil, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today, my guest is Aya Bochman. This is an extremely special episode. In fact, it's so special that I'm recording the intro to it outside my studio. That would explain strange sound quality if you hear it, and I apologize. But it's just, I need to get this to you right now, because today, Aya's company, that is Fashn AI, is launching their product. It's on Product Hunt, it's on social media. There are links actually in the show notes. Go check them out. It's an incredible product and a more incredible story. In our discussion today with Aya, we talk about Fashn AI, her company that she co-founded with her husband and co-founder. And this company is just incredible because they wanted to build something with AI, and they're both extremely talented engineers and very complementary. She is a web engineer and her husband is a machine learning engineer. And together, they themselves, as a team of two people, with no external fundraising at all, built this company and now have paying customers and recurring revenue. And they're only growing rapidly. It is such an incredible story, especially if you're someone into building, if you're a builder, if you consider yourself a hacker, maybe an indie hacker, you will really appreciate this story. It is so extremely impressive. Fashn AI has 4 applications, including their flagship application, which is one where you can try on clothes with AI. So you just upload a picture of yourself, upload a picture of some shirt or item of clothing, and click a button. And in about 22 seconds, you get what you would look like with the clothing on in the picture you chose. And it's so cool because it makes the clothing fall the way it would. It handles physics, it handles wrinkling, it handles all of this with pure image generation using text to image model that they trained in-house, again, as a team of 2 with no external funding. We dive deep into the architecture of Fashn AI, how they, as a team of 2 independent hackers, literally, with no external fundraising, could build this thing to the level that it is. And the secret sauce is they use composable architecture. So a lot of it is serverless. It runs on Supabase, RunPod, and Fal, and a bunch of other technologies that we talk about. It's truly a remarkable story if you're one who is a builder or just who appreciates the craft of engineering. If you're interested in also building a business, Aya and her husband are first-time founders, and they've learned some lessons that you would benefit from. So if you're interested in what it would take to build a tech product as an independent developer without any external funding, how you can move really fast with composable architecture, or the business side of how you can build one, this episode is for you. It is such a special episode also because they are launching today. And again, I'd encourage you, go check them out. Now, I'd like to offer this to all of you at no cost, and the way we can do that is through sponsors and partners. Let's take a moment to acknowledge them. The Contagious Code podcast is sponsored by Code Crafters. Code Crafters teaches you how to code the way I teach you how to code. My most popular talk ever was one called Deconstructing React, where we built React from scratch by not importing it, but just filling in the undefined errors. Code Crafters teaches you how to code by having you pick a programming language like JavaScript or Python and a tool that developers use like Redis or Git or Docker, and they have you build the tool in the language you choose from scratch. By doing this, you get better at the language, but you also get better at the tool. It's a really great 2-for-1. They have a generous free tier, but should you start paying, you can get 40% off following the link in the show notes. That's tej.as/codecrafters. The Contagious Code podcast is also partnered with React Africa and React Brussels. These 2 conferences are happening soon, and we're giving away 1 free ticket per conference to a lucky winner. There's a raffle. If you want to enter the raffle, share this episode on social media, say you want to enter, and say you want to actually attend the conference, and you will. It's that simple. So we're giving away a free ticket there, and we'd more than be happy to send someone who would benefit from it. Finally, the Contagious Code podcast is giving away the Epic React V2 by Kenzie Dot. 1 free copy of this course. If you want to win the episode, share your favorite timestamp. If you want to win the prize, share your favorite timestamp from this episode, and we'll get you there. I'm so excited about this episode that I'm actually speaking faster than my mouth, and I hope you share in this excitement. Now for my discussion with Aya Bochman. Aya Bochman, welcome to Contagious Code.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to dive into fashion today. And it's interesting because listeners may hear fashion and think we're going to talk about like fashion, and we might, but by fashion I mean Fashn, your company.
Yes.
Let's maybe, to start the discussion, talk a little bit about what fashion is, where it came from. And I mean fashion as in the name of your company, what it is, where it came from, and sort of why now?
Okay, so Fashn was founded by me and my husband, which is now my co-founder. We started it 1 year ago. Both of us were working like in different fields. So I started as a full stack developer. He was a machine learning developer. And yeah. And we decided that like our skills really complement each other and that we should start something together. And at the time, generative AI was kind of just starting. I mean, to get popularity, you had ChatGPT come out and like stable diffusion. So we were thinking about a lot of ideas, like what can we do with it? And eventually we came to Fashn, which started from something. I mean, we had another idea before that, but I will get to that probably maybe later. But essentially, Fashn is an AI first company that is focused on researching generative AI solutions for fashion, for the fashion industry. And we felt that there is currently a bit of a lack between the fashion industry, like for implementing that and using AI, generative AI for, I don't know, campaigns, their website, e-commerce, and things like that. So this is our vision, like to make it happen, to use generative AI to make it happen and to try and produce the best possible virtual try-on results, which is currently what we're focused on. So virtual try-on, for those of you who don't know, is generating clothes on a person. In our case, it's from an image. It's like image to image generation from just one reference photo. So you can upload one image of the garment, one image of the model, and then click on a button and our model will generate the result.
I actually used that. Thank you, by the way. For those listening, Aya sent me a link just before, and I got to play with it, and I generated some very problematic clothes on myself just for fun. I was actually a little bit scared because I just searched for t-shirt, t-shirt images on Google image search here in Germany where I'm based, and the worst possible results came up. The query was literally just t-shirt, but it was very political and very disturbing. In any case,
wow.
I just found the first one. I found the first one and I put it on myself using Fashn. And I love that it's exactly how you describe, right? It's like you've got two inputs. You've got a photo of you and you've got a clothing item. Could be a shirt, could be pants. And you just select them, click generate, and you get a decent representation of what it would look like on you. So I found these like really disturbing political t-shirts and I thought, whatever, it's just a test. And I generated a photo of myself wearing one. And I sent it to my brother-in-law, who's in the German army. So you want to talk about politics. And he was just surprised to see me wearing that, and he was like, "What? Why would you wear this?" And I said, "No, it's just AI generated." So it was a very interesting morning having to explain to people I never actually wore these shirts, which is actually a good testament to how fashion works. However, I do have some feedback about it. We can
Yes,
maybe talk about
please.
after the podcast. It's actually positive. It just made me look more muscular, which is cool. But at the same time,
Interesting.
it didn't represent my body exactly to how it is. It gave me like literally like 1 to 2 pounds more muscle, which I think is great. I wish I could do that in real life. In any case, it's a really great product. I love that you describe Fashn as a company focused on researching Gen AI for fashion. And so you've got this product, this virtual try-on. But if I hear you correctly, this isn't the entire story.
Oh, yes. The story is huge. Actually, what you're saying right now, it's our recent kind of rebranding that we did because we realized that our message was not good enough because we thought like to market ourselves as like AI photography for fashion. But then we saw comments from people saying, okay, maybe you're just fine tuning an existing model and maybe like it's not you or whatever, you know? So we're like, okay, people don't understand the amount of hours and work that we put into this and the research, the trial and error. Like it's a very difficult problem to solve. And yeah, I still don't know. Sometimes we look at what we did and we're like, why did we get into this? Like how did we get into this? Because it's so complicated. And actually, how it started is like we thought it's going to be an easy problem to solve, like because you had stable diffusion, and we thought, okay, maybe we can fine tune that on close, you know, with our data and get decent results, and that's it. But apparently, it's not the case, and it's way harder than it seems. And another thing is that the fashion industry is very demanding in a sense that they need the accuracy.
Yeah.
And yeah, for example, what you mentioned that happened to you, I mean, I can explain why it happened, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it happened because of the data, of course, because we train on models, on like
Oh, I
fashion
see.
images.
So
And
it makes me look more like a model.
I mean, it might change a little bit of details. I mean, it's generative AI, right? It's hallucinating
Right.
sometimes. It's imagining things. That's okay. I mean, that's something that currently, I mean, that's the biggest limitation, I would say. And yeah, the fashion industry requires like really, really accurate results, like pixel perfect, I don't know, to the stitches, to the amount of the stitches on the t-shirt. But we try our best. I mean, it's a game of data training. So our model is training 24/7, basically. Yeah. So it's a complicated process, I would say.
I would love to dive more into that. You mentioned you initially started as first of all, you mentioned this was around the time of Stable Diffusion, which is great to hear because I also sort of started with Gen AI around this time. I saw Stable Diffusion, I saw the ability to fine tune it with Dream Booth, and I'm just like, wow, what is this? That's so cool. And then I ended up doing some fine tuning. So I'd love that we both
Cool.
started in the space at a similar time. It's interesting that you chose clothing, but also you started thinking of something like fashion photography, but generative AI. And I think that's very interesting as a first direction. You mentioned people thought people tended to reduce it. Oh, it's a very simple thing. Can we speak to what people reduced it to? Meaning, what's the simple thing that people would maybe think is not as complex before we then talk about the complexities that exist in fashion today?
Yeah, so I think the easiest belief in general, like with generative AI, is that it's easy, it's some kind of magic. I mean, you prompt something and you should get what you're asking for. I don't know, with ChatGPT, for example. And same with clothes, like, okay, I'm trying on a dress and I expect it to look exactly like it looks, and I want my body to stay the same. And like, I think it's a matter of maybe education that people don't understand how this subject is hard and very deep and has so many levels. And again, I mean, I take responsibility for that. I think we can try to educate more about it and write more about it and how difficult it is. But yeah, essentially, generative AI is generative AI. It hallucinates. It has like weird things that you do not expect. And that's why it's so hard for fashion specifically, because it's not like some kind of painting that you want to do, like digital art or cool things, or even photos of yourself. Like if you're training a Laura on your face and it looks nice, it resembles you. But I mean, still, even that is not perfect, I would say. Even that you can see that it's AI generated. So yeah, with clothes, I think the challenge is even bigger in that sense.
Right. You branded it as photography for fashion in the beginning, and people thought, "Oh, this is way too simple" because of the lack of education. And then you said it became this thing. It is this thing now that is far more complex. And you also kind of alluded to it just now in your answer when you talked about training Laura's. For the listeners, let's start just at the highest level of this complexity, right? And you mentioned generative AI does hallucinate. It's almost a feature of generative AI. That's how you get the novel outcomes. And
Yeah.
so, what are some of the complexities you're working with today as fashion becomes this not just fashion photography app, but a fashion platform? I have to assume it's getting the clothes to even just map directly in three-dimensional space, right? Because people's bodies usually like angled to the side, they're not straight. And then there's the whole gravity effect of like wrinkling clothes and making sure that some random JPEG of a shirt like looks physical. So I'm
Yeah.
probably like getting at some like very abstract complexities here, but I having built this, right? I'm wondering if you could spend a few sentences talking about where the real difficulty and complexity is.
So there is a lot of complexity in terms of, first of all, the method that you're doing it in, because I know there are companies that are going into the 3D direction or like augmented reality, which is completely different. And maybe they're like, yeah, you can train a model or clothes or like the shape of the person better, but you also need to get data of the person probably. like the sizes, the measurements, so that you know how to put the garment on him. And with virtual try-on, I mean, everything is in the data, in how you train the model, in the parameters that you put. And it has this kind of randomness to it still. And we are trying to research. That's why we are saying that we're like researching this, because it is a lot of tests that we make. So yeah, right now I think that also another limitation is the resolution. People want high resolutions. I mean, especially fashion brands that want to work with us. They're like, okay, it looks amazing. It's like the best I've ever seen. Sometimes we even get that, which is, it's great, but your resolution is not high enough. And we are currently like in the 500 pixels resolutions. And why is that? Because we are kind of limited by compute, because we are training only on 4 A100s, and we would like H100s GPUs.
Right.
So our training, first of all, it's also slower. So it's harder to see your experiments and how they perform. But yeah, I would say the biggest limitation is resolution and accuracy and pixel perfect results. And that's what we are mostly dedicated to, achieving that. And yeah, I hope we will continue to get better results with time.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Are the models custom foundation models that you're working with? Are they pre-trained in-house, or are they fine-tunes of model? And feel free to not share if anything's like proprietary.
No, it's okay. So actually, my husband Dan, my co-founder, he's like the AI engineer, like not AI, machine learning expert. So he actually built it from scratch. Like we collected data. Yeah. So he trained it from scratch with data that we collected. And there is also an interesting story to that, because we had to do a lot of things, like to manage almost 4 millions of data, like of fashion images.
Wow.
That's what we trained it on. Yeah, it's our model in-house. He read a lot of papers, tried to understand. And the thing is with that the papers, they don't provide you with like the exact parameters that you need to put or how exactly to do it. So that's why you have to experiment all the time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's so awesome to hear that. One, it's a foundation model that you created, but two, that it's trained on data that you collected. None of the data is stolen. I think that's so special in today's generative AI day and age.
Yeah. Not only that, like sometimes people, like potential customers also, they were like, for example, we had this guy from India, and he said, I want you to be better like with Indian clothes, because there are these traditional clothes, sometimes like a shirt that looks like a tunic, almost like a dress. I forgot how it's called.
A sherwani.
Yes, exactly that. So he's like, let me find some data for you. Maybe I can contact like this brand from India and ask them to give you some data, and you can train on it to be better with generating this kind of shirts. So yeah, that's cool. That's also how we get our data.
That is so awesome. You said something earlier that I can't stop thinking about, and I'd love to double click on a little bit, which you said our models are training 24/7.
Yeah.
How does that work? As far as I know, models, they train, and then, training is sort of complete. You do some evals and then you host it. That's what GPT-4 is, for example. What does it mean to be constantly training? And also then, serving inferences for people, meaning they try and, generate what would I look on with these clothes. Is it that a model, like, I guess the question that I have here is, when is training finished if it's 24/7? And how do you then use it in your application?
Yeah, so regarding the inference, like that, what you use now is obviously like some checkpoint that we deployed of the model that is okay to use. But behind the scenes, I mean, we are still continuing on training and checking and, looking at the validation and checking if it looks right. And then we can upload another checkpoint, like a better one, if it trained even more. But by saying, 24/7, it means that, we're currently we're like at the millions of steps in the training. Like it's a lot. So we never stop because we needed to improve, and we also need more data. And when we get more data, we add it also to the training. So basically now what we do, it's almost like fine tuning our own model, like adding more and more pieces and trying to make it perform even better. And yeah, this thing is really costly.
I can
And
imagine.
yeah, and we are a self-funded company, so we went into it completely alone. We don't have funding. Yeah.
Every time you say something, I'm just like mind blown. This is very none of this is traditional. Like that we see in like typical. Is the company based in SF?
No, it's based in London, actually. It's registered in
Okay,
London.
well there you go. Like nothing here is like is common about this. It's a very uncommon company, which I absolutely love, right? Because typically people would start a company, they would probably raise funds before customers, definitely certainly
Yeah.
before customers, but also just when you have an idea and a proof of concept, I'm going to go raise a few million from some venture capital firm because it's a very bull market right now, and
Yeah.
then so all of what I'm hearing, not only the fact that you don't have funding, but also the fact that you've trained your own models. This is very DIY, which I so appreciate because it's like you're getting your hands dirty, so to speak.
Thank
You
you.
recently celebrated 1 month since launching. That's what I saw on X,
Yeah.
formerly Twitter. I think last week.
Hmm.
What was that like? What was launching this product? Especially now that I have the extra context of there is no private equity, there's no funding, and or it's self funded rather, and it's just the results are based on foundationally in house trained models.
Yeah. So yeah, we also had a lot of like drama with our launch, let's say. I mean, because before that, we had a really small resolution, like 198 pixels. And
Mm-hmm.
like 3 months ago, we kind of launched, but it was a Hugging Face demo. So it was open to everybody. No one was signing up to a platform or anything. Like it was open. People were trying it. But then, yeah, we wanted to do an actual launch, and we thought that our model is going to get to higher resolution, but it didn't. The results weren't good enough. And it was like a very, very low point in our like journey. But then I talked to some interesting people that contacted me because I wrote something about like why virtual trying is not solved. And I was a bit frustrated, like what are the difficulties, the limitations. And they told me, you know what? It's good enough. Like the results are good. Just launch it. Just put it out there. And you will see that if you will have users and feedback, you will feel better. And it's true. That's what really happened because we kind of silently launched it. Like we launched a lower resolution and we did start getting some users. So we moved out of the Hugging Face demo. But yeah, just 1 week ago, we like officially announced that we have this higher resolution and we got it, like we cracked it finally. It's still not enough for many like brands and people who are really looking for this technology, but it's something. And the interesting thing is that developers love using it. Like most of our customers are API users. So I'm glad we did that because initially we thought going just with the platform for fashion brands, but then we're like, no, maybe developers want to make cool apps, like indie hackers and things like that. So yeah, and we got pretty good feedback from user. We have some users, still not enough. Obviously, we're trying to grow now. But it's really exciting because I think now it's the fun part of realizing like how to get users, and you are actually working on supporting your users instead of developing, which is a good thing sometimes, but sometimes you like have this technical depth and things that you want to. There's always so much work. So yeah.
It's always nicer when you have actual users who can then tell you what they want as opposed to I feel like I've been part of very early startups where we're just trying to guess like, hey, what would people want, what would they care about, and I love that you now have, so you mentioned 490 signups and 27 paying customers. I can't comprehend how good this is for you, right? Because like
Yeah.
I've been part of early startups that will raise $4 million in a seed round and then have zero paying customers for the first 2 years.
What?
And so, yeah, this is so cool. So, what was that like? How did you handle that influx? I mean, 490 signups for a team of two seems like a lot to juggle while also building this company and then training the model 24/7. And so what was that influx like? Again, 490 signups and 27 paying
Oh,
customers.
that's amazing, actually, that you're saying that, because you always think that you're not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough users, it's not enough signups. But so thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, we're using Supabase, first of all. It's great. So our users are there, and Auth0 as well. It's not that hard to maintain yet. Like, it's not like all of them are writing to us but we have a Discord server for the company, for Fashn, and we have about 150 people there. So that's how we mostly communicate with the customers. Like, they can ping us and say if they have a problem with the API or anything, or the platform. So that's the main channel that we currently communicate with our customers.
And again, you're just a team of two. This is kind of banana. Would you say, you mentioned Supabase, you mentioned Auth0. Is the product Fashn AI, outside of the machine learning stuff, of course, is it making use of? It sounds like it's making use of composable architecture, meaning just connect to a bunch of serverless stuff, and then let them handle the scale, the load, and that way we get to actually build a business. Is that what's helping you deal with the growth?
In a way, you could say that, yes. I mean, that part was all on me, which is also hard, because like Dan, my co-founder, he's doing all the AI stuff and the complicated training, and I need to do all the rest. So, and we don't only have one app, right? Like, we have the website, we have the app for the users, we have the API, and we have a back office where we
And
QA our
you
data.
built all of this yourself?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I can tell you that ChatGPT helped a lot. Obviously, we couldn't have done it without it, like that you have this kind of helper that helps you make things faster. But basically I built all of our apps on Next.js. I hosted with the SST. I started using SST. I really loved it.
Why we have this is getting super interesting because we have discussions with the CEO of SST and
I
Vercel and
saw.
Flight Control. What made you choose SST, and why not? I mean, you're already building on Next.js. Why not go with
Yeah.
Vercel?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I love Vercel. Like, it's really comfortable to use. It's amazing. Like, I used it for years. But I don't know why I got into it, but I wanted to do things myself. And SST was still a bit new, like, I mean, in popularity when I started using it like 1 year ago. And I'm like, I didn't know anything about AWS, by the way, before that, anything. Like, I never touched the things
Wow.
like serverless and stuff like that, never. So I started learning about it and I'm like, that's really cool. You can deploy something very easily, like with just one command, almost in one config file, and it works and it's okay. And like, okay, it's on AWS, the console. So I tried it. It worked. And I'm like, okay, let's just stick with it for now. And again, we're a self-funded company. Vercel, like for organizational GitHubs, they take like $20 per month, I think.
Right.
So we said we would wait with it till it. I know it's easier. Like, I really support the idea of that because you spend a lot of time of learning about things like SST. It's not for everyone, I think. And sometimes that time equals money, right? I mean, you better use Vercel to just ship things faster and you're done with the infrastructure stuff. But maybe for me, it was like a personal thing that I wanted to research, to
Challenge
pursue.
yourself.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, to challenge myself. And yeah, it's great. But I'm still using Vercel now, actually, because we got into their startup program. So I'm using them for one app currently, for the docs that we have.
Okay.
I might move the rest of my apps there, maybe, if I get tired of SST, but we'll see. Right now,
This
it's
is
working.
this is so incredible. So you said four apps: the website, the actual Fashion try-on app, the docs, and what was the fourth?
So we have a back office. I
Oh, the
can
back
tell you a little
office,
bit more
right?
about that because I think it's interesting. Like, the way we handled millions of data. Like, we had this data set of like 4 million images, right? So it's all on Supabase. And then we got the data. And then we said, okay, how do we label it? I mean, you need to tag it. You need to know what's in the image, right? Like, if it's a t-shirt, if it's pants, if the model's pose, if it's front facing, 3/4, things like that. So what we did, I built this back office from scratch. And we were looking at our data through the back office that I built. So it means that we had sessions of just the two of us sitting and tagging data like over the weekend.
And it was 4 million total data points.
So no, I mean, we didn't do the whole 4 million. I mean, we did like 10,000 of them for sure. And then what happened? Because, by the way, we were looking for a solution like that, for like a platform that enables you to tag data. And there are, but they were just not specific enough for our requirements. Because we needed the categories, we needed the pose, and all these like men, women, all these things. So after we tagged our own data on ourselves, on our own, we started using vector databases to like try and look for similarities. And Supabase also helped with that, by the way. So it was cool. And I had to develop like the interface on our back office to look at these similarities. And then we could, or for example, duplicates, because you can have a lot of duplicates in your data set. And I had to display that on the back office. And then we could like kind of say, okay, this is good, this is not good, this is junk, like this, you need to delete this image. And that's how we did that. That was another like middle stage, like the vector databases, finding the similarities, conflicts, like things like that. And then Dan, my co-founder, he actually developed models for that. So it's a model that trained on what we already did, and then it can start tagging it by itself. So that's how you do the whole like 4 millions of images.
That's so
it's still
cool.
not 100% accurate, of course, but it's enough.
But it may get there. So it sounds like you still need a human in the loop, but what you've got here is it's a machine learning model as judge type of architecture, right? Where that's so cool. I think this is I think we don't appreciate this enough. We had an episode with Kyle Corbett, the co-founder of a company called OpenPipe, where they have to do similar stuff, meaning they allow their customers to fine-tune cheaper open source models based on outputs from a large language model like GPT-4. And they've got to do evaluations on their custom fine tunes. Like, is this actually a good response? And so with OpenPipe, they've automated this whole thing. They have an LLM that will tell you this is a good eval, that's a bad eval. And then as a human, you just confirm or deny a few instead of like,
Yeah.
millions. So I love that y'all are doing machine learning on machine learning. That's so great. For the listeners, can we talk a little bit about this labeling process? Just because I want to be sensitive to folks who maybe have never done this themselves. You've got input data. This is pictures of models wearing clothes, posing, etc. Why do you have to label them? Is it because when you train the model on these models, these human models, the machine learning model through the training process will recognize features according to labels? Or how does that all work together?
Yeah, so we do that because we need to know, like, what are we looking at in the image? For example, what is the model wearing? That's the most important. What color it is? In what pose is the model is standing? So it is important for the model to know that, because when it's training, it's learning all of these features like poses and types of garments. There are so many in fashion, like with clothes. We learned ourselves like that there are so many types of clothes, like ruffled t-shirt, or I don't know, like loose fit, tight fit, all of these things. It's important for the model to know. Yeah, and that's why you need to sit and tag it and be as accurate as you can.
Talking about being as accurate as you can, creating a product that finally you're seeing the fruits of. I think it was on September that I saw you posted, "Hi mom, I made my first internet dollar." It was $4 from Stripe, and it's cool. Now I understand how Stripe fits into the whole thing as well, because you're using Supabase and Auth0. It's just composable architecture. That's the name of the game. What did that feel like to earn that $4 with something that you and your husband built?
That was amazing. Like, we were separated at the time. I mean, I was abroad. I was visiting my hometown in Israel, so we couldn't be together like to celebrate. But yeah, it was crazy. I just saw this first email, from Stripe that like, you
Yeah.
have payment. It like they actually send you like this is your first payment or something like that. Congrats.
Oh wow.
I was like, wow, somebody actually found value. Like somebody is working with it, and it was for the API, by the way. Like it's the most, yeah, it's the most like popular thing that we made apparently. And I like it's me. It's crazy. Like it's something that I built, and it's working because again, like I
Yeah.
did it with SST. It's on AWS, like API gateway. It's working. It's fine.
Yeah.
Now I'm actually trying to improve it, but yeah, I'm so
That
happy
is
about
so
that.
cool. Yeah, we there's a whole discussion here about do we build like who do we build for, right? Because like we just shipped this episode with Pierre, the founder of Cal.com. And he mentioned, look, and this is something I often forget. Cal.com is not a product for developers. It's a product for it's literally like here's book something in my calendar. I'm a chef. I'm a martial artist. I'm a whatever, right? It's like it gives people a way to book stuff with them. Everybody, not just developers. And Pierre was mentioning it's really important to build software for the world, like mass market, public, accessible software, as opposed to stuff just for developers. If we think about stuff just for developers, we can think about Supabase. Supabase is not for
Yeah.
everybody; it's for developers. And so, Pierre was mentioning it's super important to build for a wide net and then do an API. And he cited ChatGPT as an example, where ChatGPT was for everybody, but then they ship an API as well, just for developers wanting to build with it. It sounds like in your case, the opposite is true, meaning people like the API and use it more so than the mass market clothes try on application. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so it's really interesting what happened because our initial idea was that people will use the platform. So we will kind of build the best platform possible to make our model accessible and for example, fashion brands to use it. But then we got many, like before we launched even, we got all these requests from developers or on our Discord saying like, hey, are you going to have an API? And that was all they were interested about. So they're like, okay, we need to build an API. It wasn't on our roadmap or anything.
Wow.
So yeah, I did it, and apparently it was super successful in that sense that many developers want to build cool apps with our technology, which is also like a certain direction that you can take because we could be the ones who build this cool app, right, with our technology. And we did kind of do it with our web app that we have right now. So that's where you can try our product. But we said, okay, why limited to just that when you have people who can, I don't know, maybe build a Shopify plugin? For example, I don't know how to build a Shopify plugin yet. I might learn about it
Nice.
soon.
Yet.
but but yeah, it would be cool if people could kind of distribute our model, our product, and just build cool things with it. So yeah, I wish it will become more and more.
That is so cool. Would you then give this as advice to other founders? Meaning, would you tell them to invest in an API from day one? Because if you did that, probably the developers wouldn't have asked, and you would have just had something ready. But conversely, if you did it and then nobody wanted it, you would have wasted a bunch of time, right? So I have to assume there's people listening now who are going like, should we learn from Aya and create an API early? Or should we wait for demand, or something in between? What would you say to those people listening?
I think it's a matter of like, first of all, the demand. You have to research, you have to reach out to people or understand if it's something that people are looking for, even search on Google and things like that. Because in our case, how we did it is even before we launched our first ever demo, it was on Hugging Face. No, actually, first of all, our first demo on Hugging Face was using RunPod. I mean, we are still using RunPod, by the way, to host our model. So it was using straight the RunPod API. And then when we saw people are getting interest in the product and writing to us, like, do you have an API? We decided to develop it. And then we put our API in the RunPod, in the Hugging Face demo. And we watched that it was working fine. yeah, and then eventually we decided like about the pricing, and we put it out there, and people were actually buying it. So I would say it's a matter of research and talking to
Right.
users, to interested parties.
I love that. Yeah, that's what everyone says when I ask them for advice like this. We have an episode that's going to ship soon with Max Stoiber, the founder of Stellate, formerly known as Graph CDN. Also, just got acquired. I don't remember by who. In any case, he's now this entrepreneur that's been acquired twice, and he also mentions he's just like just be obsessed with what they have to say. Just do research. He's like that's the most important thing. He's like don't even build a product. Just like keep listening to people. And so I received that. Let's talk a little bit about this model that you're running. You mentioned RunPod. I don't
Yeah.
know what RunPod is, but
Oh.
one of their developer relations people, Tim Petruski, is a longtime loyal listener of the podcast and also a friend of mine.
Oh, cool.
And now I should probably get him as a guest. But for the listeners, you mentioned RunPod. If we could have like a couple sentences of what it is.
Yeah, so RunPod, I think they're like a relatively small startup. I'm also speaking with Tim, by the way. Like he's really nice. We follow each other on Twitter.
That's
So
awesome.
he's helping me also. And so RunPod, they allow you to basically run your model serverless, like serverless GPUs, basically.
Wow.
That's how you do it. So we decided to use them, and it works really well so far. So they're basically like we run our inference through them, and they have obviously you have like these cold starts and things like that, but that's okay. It works fine, and they can handle our traffic currently. So because we don't have that much yet.
Right.
And yeah, it's really easy. They have a nice platform, like very user-friendly platform to use. You can control
Awesome.
everything.
Do they host your model? Do you upload your model to them? I assume models like
Yes.
many gigabytes.
Yes, we do. Like I think it's like via Docker or something. Like it's not. I don't do it. It like
Wow.
it's my co-founder. But yeah,
Okay.
it's. But then they give you like an API endpoint that you can call to run your own model. So
That is
my
so cool.
API is basically running RunPod behind the scenes, right? Just under my like name.
Brilliant. We'll get Tim
Yeah.
to tell us about the internals of RunPod. So I wanted to. So when I used Fashn this morning, I was impressed. Because like I had again, it's crazy. You just like put in a picture of yourself. It doesn't have to be a perfect picture. So I spent some time searching for a high quality full body picture, but I couldn't find any because it's usually taken at a conference with a ton of noise and people in the background and so on. So it wasn't a clean picture. I put the picture in and I just found some random t-shirt, as I mentioned. It took 22 seconds. That is incredible because I'd like to think about the work that's happening, right? You recognize the pose, recognize the background, handle like clothing segmentation, all of this in 22 seconds. Incredible. Is that just RunPod? Is there more to it? How do you achieve such performance?
So RunPod helps right now. I think you got the speed because we also increased like the GPUs that it's run on, like so it would be faster for users because we're starting to get a little bit more traffic. But yeah, of course, it's also like our internal optimizations that we have to do to make it run faster eventually, and that's really also one of the hardest parts. And yeah, the dream is to have it in an instant, but it's not easy. But right now, you the default on the platform is like 50 time steps. If you decrease it a little bit, it will be even faster. So it depends. But currently we found that 50 time steps is like the best prop that you can have right now.
What are time steps?
So it's like the steps that the inference is like that the model is creating your try-on, basically. Like so 50.
Okay.
So that's why you get about 22 seconds. And if you decrease it a little bit, you can make it even faster.
Is that somewhere in the UI, like in advanced settings or something, where I can
Yes, we
change it?
have like
Oh,
advanced, it's called advanced sampling controls. So that's how you can control a little bit and tweak the results of your try-on, basically. We wrote an article about it as well, like a little guide that explains it.
I think I saw that article where it talks about also, if it's safe to cover the feet and
Yeah.
preserve the background and so on. Fantastic. We'll put links to that in the show notes.
Yeah, but that's also like it's such a complicated world, like and thing to do that I think one of the biggest challenges for us, like, or for me when I'm doing this interface, is make it user friendly so that people who are not technical or not from the AI space, they can understand what to do and how to get better results. And I think that's the biggest challenge of like bridging this gap of how to use this generative AI technology, so yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned APIs and developers, and where the conversation about APIs and developers is not far from that in like vector space, if you want to speak, is a conversation about open source. You mentioned your models are training 24/7, they're constantly getting better, and you have like the greatest checkpoint deployed at any given time. Now we know via RunPod. Is there an idea or maybe an initiative to take some, obviously not the latest greatest checkpoint because that's your business, but to take an older checkpoint and offer that one as an open source model that people can just deploy themselves and use whenever they want?
That's an interesting question. I never thought about an older checkpoint. But
I mean, it would just make no business sense to do the current checkpoint, right? Like the best one.
yeah, but also, I mean, yeah, even if you open source, it's like, do you put the weights? Like, do you want to really give everything? So, yeah, it's tricky. We're still thinking about this, I would say, but I think it's really hard because we are a self-funded team and we put so much effort and blood, sweat, and tears into this and money. And I mean, most of the money was not from our pocket because we had these amazing credit programs like GCP, Azure, NVIDIA. So they helped a lot in giving us those credits for GPUs for our compute, and they still do. But it's a lot of money and effort. And I think that's the main thing, that's the main reason why we don't open source, at least yet. It's not something that we didn't think about, but we need to see how we approach this, because I don't know how, as a self-funded team, you can kind of just do it and put it out there. On the other hand, it could be amazing because maybe other smart people from all over the world could contribute and make it the best virtual try-on ever. So that's an interesting point. Yeah.
It's trade-offs. Perhaps one day when the team is, I don't know, and we'll probably talk about the future, how you want to grow the company. But if you intend to, grow it to many people and whatever, then it might make sense to where it's not going to matter that much because it's no longer a team of two and there's more blood, sweat, and tears as opposed to the few
Yeah.
people. In any case, we will address that later. You mentioned. I had to laugh because as I sort of followed the journey of you building Fashn, you mentioned, when you silently launched this Hugging Face demo, people tried to upload an enormous amount of porn and or generate it. And you're just like, at least the sentiment I got from your post was like, this emoji with like, what is happening right now? You mentioned after just the first day of being live, you had to add a filter, an NSFW
Yeah.
filter. Um,
Oh
I
my God.
the
Yeah.
I love it. No, the internet's a horrible place, and like I've known this for a while, but can you walk us through that the context of that, mainly around just this optimistic, I'm going to upload this thing to Hugging Face and it's going to be awesome. And then the response afterward, like, and then I guess coming back to the technical details, I want to talk about implementing this filter, right? What did it take? Was it a pre-baked one? Was it just a feature detection model that you put in front of your existing, fashion generation model to go like, nope, we're not doing that. And then I want to talk about the impact that had on performance. So I apologize. I'm throwing like eight
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
questions at
Yeah.
you. But I feel like this is very interesting because at the end of the day, there's probably trade-offs between, do we weigh content moderation very heavily, or do we weigh processing speed and just optimize for performance less than 22 seconds, right? So I'd love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so first of all, it was an interesting experience. Like after we first ever launched our model on Hugging Face, it was open to the whole world. And then you realize there are crazy people, like sick people even, I would say, that do these things. And unfortunately, like I was a bit traumatized, like the day after, like the morning that we saw, like we were monitoring the results. And you see crazy things, like, I don't want to say, but really, like people even trying kids and things like that. It's horrible. And I think it's everyone's problem who's in generative AI, by the way, especially image to image. I'm sure that all of the big models today, like they suffer from it and they had to do some kind of moderation for that. And it's terrible just to discover this part of humanity, I guess. So I couldn't even look at it. And I was like, Dan, please do something about it. We have to have this filter. I didn't even expect that, right? Because it's try on, like it's trying on clothes. But obviously people, the first thing they do is try lingerie on their like classmate at school
Oh,
or
that's
something.
awful.
It's horrible, right? So I'm like, okay, Dan, please fix this. So I think he just used something that he found for NSFW, like for checking something existing probably, and just put it there pretty fast. Kudos to him for implementing it like in a day. And he put it as part of the workflow of the model. It doesn't add more like heavier processing. I mean, it's not making our model slower or anything, but sometimes also you have now false positives with that, because if you upload like a shirt that or something, a garment that it's a bit pink, or your model is a bit pinkish, then it can also mistake it for NSFW. So that happens. But yeah, when we also, it was funny because we created this meme on the Hugging Face demo after we deployed the NSFW filter, that if you try to generate an NSFW, you get like this, I think it was like this meme of like a gif of Justin Timberlake like looking at you like, that's not okay.
That's
So it
awesome.
was funny. We were like trolling people.
That's so pleasant. Yeah, I don't do image to image, thank God, but the podcast has a search feature that uses Gen AI on tage.as/podcast, and it's actually cool because after we ship this episode, people can literally be like, "Who's using Supabase?" and Fashn will come up alongside a bunch of other guests who've talked about Supabase. But in any case, even just a text input, the day I shipped this, people were searching all kinds of nonsense. And of course, we have logging, like we see what people are searching for. And it's just, it's like irrelevant personal stuff about me and my life and my income and I'm just like, that's not the point of this.
Wow.
That's just, people are so yeah, the internet's awful, and I'm sorry I had to deal with that, but I'm glad it sounds like the response was quick and cost free, meaning in terms of performance costs, your users are not having to pay too much for that. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
What other, besides this, security issues have become apparent now that you have a model in production? And I'm asking because this is something that's often neglected, right? A lot of people say, hey, let's just build something with generative AI. Let's stitch together multiple APIs, Grok and Anthropic and OpenAI, and do something. Let's do agents. Let's do multi-agent workflows, whatever. But I find security is often not a part of this conversation because they are depending on external vendors via API. In your case, it's your model. It's like most stuff is in-house in terms of the machine learning side. And so I think this is interesting to sort of set aside a few minutes and discuss the security issues and measures that you had to implement in response to things that, frankly, a lot of people are not going to see coming.
So I don't know. I mean, in terms of security, I think the biggest problem was the NSFW and people trying to do lingerie. They still do sometimes, and sometimes it works, but just our model was not trained on it. And we do have like a terms of service that says that you cannot do that. You cannot use children. You cannot try to dress people with lingerie that didn't agree to it, let's say. So that was the biggest issue. I didn't see any other issue except for that. What you can see is, people trying to do the trying with really weird images. Like sometimes they try game avatars, like from gaming, which is cool. And it works, which is also funny because sometimes it
Wow.
works. And we didn't expect that, but because we didn't train on it. But it's cool. It's cool to see that people
That's
are trying
so
to take
cool.
it in different directions, like cartoons also sometimes. But the main thing is just trying to upload like a reasonable looking image and not to, take it too far with like a very wide shot angle where you can barely see the person in the image. But again, we have error handling for all of that, so we can recognize when the aspect ratio is not right, and I don't know, you cannot find any key points of the person. For example, we have a problem now. I mean, we are working on it, but we can generate from a flat lay and from a person wearing the garment. So there is a difference.
A flat lay, what's that?
Flat lay. So a flat lay, yeah, I still can't find like a better term to describe it, but basically a flat lay is an image of a t-shirt that is like shot beautifully on the floor, or with white background.
It's laid flat. Interesting.
Laid flat. Yeah, maybe laid flat is better. And a model image is a model wearing the garment. So a lot of people, they try flat lays, like photos of a t-shirt or a dress. And we cannot know, I mean, it's harder for us to know how it should be on a person in terms of the fit, in terms of, I don't know, if it has like an open back, maybe we cannot really recognize the details. This is something that we will solve with more data of these types of images. But it was really a small part of our data set, like until now. And that's why maybe we're not the best with these types of images. So that's also something, but we deployed like a feature for that. Like you can toggle on the platform if it's a flat lay, and then it will do it much better. We will.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I actually used a flat lay when I tried. I love that I can use this term now. It sounds like a fashionista. But I used this. I used a flat lay this morning, and that's the inference that made me look more like a model. So maybe I should have turned on the flat lay option. I didn't even see it. I will go back and try after the call for sure. Awesome. So now you're generating clothes on people, human people. I have to believe that this is not very far from generating the people themselves, right? So you have flat lay to body and my body, because I upload my picture, but is there support in Fashn for the other way around? So body to flat lay, meaning I can upload a picture of Ryan Gosling wearing a really cool shirt, and I just want the shirt.
Wow, that's an interesting direction, actually, you want to extract the shirt from, you want the shirt on yourself, or you just want to extract the shirt from Ryan Gosling?
Well, the shirt on myself is possible now. It's model to model, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to extract the shirt and then do like a Google reverse image search on this shirt. Like, where can I find e-commerce stores selling like this shirt laid out that way?
Actually, that's an interesting idea. We didn't think about it. I'm sure it will not be too complex to me. I mean, we already know how to take the garment from the person. So it's just a matter of like giving you the output of like, okay, this is the clothes that they're wearing. We need to think of like a use case, like who will use that, who will need that. But it's interesting.
I mean, the partnership with e-commerce, like if this was exposed over an API, I would instantly build an application where it's like, find this shirt in all the retailers near you, like the nearby Target, the nearby Zara, the nearby whatever. They find shirts using vector similarity that are close to this one. Oof.
Amazing. Maybe it will be our side project. Oh, that's a great idea, because there is like this huge Reddit, like subreddit of it's called Find Fashion. And basically that's what people do. You have so much data there, by the way. Like if you would ever do this, like people are looking like, okay, they saw this model on TV. What is she wearing? I want this shirt. I want these pants.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's cool. It's an interesting idea. Just didn't think about it.
r/find Fashn as a service. Excellent. Okay, well, it sounds like not yet, but could be. The other question I had about Fashn is you generate the clothes on people. Again, these are human people. Is it possible to take a flat lay and say, generate me a model? Like a person that doesn't exist. I saw, as a spoiler, I saw you experiment with this using Fal, where you just literally create a model from a cloth and say like what kind of person, what kind of body type would this shirt even fit well? Is that possible? I didn't find it in the platform.
Yeah, so actually on the platform we have it's on the Pro subscription, but we have the option to generate an AI model. Wow. I can give you access later if you want. So yeah,
like
we're
using.
It's like a model. I mean, it depends on your prompt, right? It's text to image, so you can write whatever you want and relay on Flux basically, because Fal is running Flux, which is amazing. It's like the best results I've ever seen, because before that I was sitting for hours generating models in Midjourney. And
Oh
the
no.
results were tricky. Like, really, it was never perfect. It never looked realistic. But now, most of the model I use, like for examples, they're all AI generated and they're beautiful. Their hands are okay. Their eyes are okay. And it's all using Flux, which is, which file are running. And it's really easy to just connect to their.
Incredible.
So it's also a solution that we developed because we know that many like small fashion brands, they don't have the resources to hire professional models to make a photo shoot. So that's why we're like, okay, let's have this option for people to just create whatever you want in whatever setting that you want, and then just put the
Right.
clothes
And
on them.
instead of paying a huge amount of money for the model and the photographer,
Yeah,
just pay fashion. That's a
yeah.
great. I think that enables so many folks. Well, also, the dark side of this is there's jobs that are going to disappear because of this. If it's that well.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, because still you cannot compete with like creative shots. I think a lot of brands, like streetwear and things like that, they like to have like very cool creative shots of their merch, like of the garments. And that is something that will be really difficult to make with our solution, for example, because we didn't train on enough photos like that, and we are more like for e-commerce. But streetwear, like they have a photo shoot of a skateboarder on the street, like wearing a hoodie. So that will be
Right.
really hard for us to make. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we're not replacing anyone's job just yet, but we'll see. I mean, I just
Well, you're
hope
you're
it will create the opportunity, for smaller fashion brands
yeah.
who don't have the money for a real photo shoot.
Exactly. And I think, this is the thing with AI. Like it does replace, and tell me if you agree or disagree, but what I've been wrestling with this a lot because I do a lot of AI engineering work also, and, have to wrestle with whose job am I taking away today. But the conclusion I've arrived at is we take away the the boring, repetitive, soulless jobs that people don't even enjoy doing but have to do sometimes. If like this sounds maybe bad, this is not a complete thought, it's very abstract, but what I mean by that is like most generic fashion photo shoots with a model that are generic and traditional and repeatable, those are the ones you're going to be able to replicate with AI and then maybe take someone's job, maybe not. But as you mentioned, streetwear or something that's so specific, maybe like Dior wants to do a shoot with somebody in a spacesuit,
Yeah.
on some elaborate set. Like this is never like you just need at this point in time real human creativity. Does that track at all?
That's really true. And actually, I know of a company that is like dedicated to creating cool fashion campaigns with generative AI, and they work with these big brands like, I don't know, Gucci or something. So it's really cool. But yeah, you said it exactly right, because our solution will fit mostly like these e-commerce repetitive images of models. Because when you go to like a clothing website, you see a model wearing like a dress and you go look at the picture and it's only this model. You don't have enough representation, like diversity or things like that. You have just one or two images of that same model. And imagine if you could multiply it and just have more assets. And you can create these more assets with your existing assets, basically, because you
Yeah.
already have the models. You already have shot like the clothes. So that's our main goal and what we really, really want to that brands will implement eventually.
Fantastic. Just so we don't lose listeners, you mentioned Fal and you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the name of the model. What's the name of the model? It was
Flux.
That's right,
Yeah.
Flux. So Flux is an I don't know if it's open source, but it's definitely an image
So
model.
they have an open source version called Flux Dev. This is open source, but they have an even better one like Schnell, and I think recently they just published like a new one, and they're not open
Right.
source. But yeah, you can easily use them through an API now with FAL.
Good. It's right. And Fal is a company that exposes these models over API, similar to
Yes.
Replicate. Is that okay?
Yes, exactly. Similar to Replicate. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I want to make sure we capture that because people listen to this podcast because they hear about things like Fal for the first time and then they go build great things.
Yeah, I just
Fantastic.
recently discovered them and it's so easy like to implement. It takes 2 seconds literally. It's amazing. Yeah.
Can you fine tune the model? I keep forgetting the name of this model. What was it called?
FAL or
No,
Flux.
the
Flux
model.
by Black
Flux. I
Forest
keep
Labs. Yeah.
That's the one. I keep forgetting Flux and Schnell. Okay, so Flux, can you fine tune Flux on Fal with like photos of you, so then you can put yourself in various different
On
pictures generated by the
I'm not
model?
sure if you, I mean, I'm not sure you can do that through FAL, because FAL, I think they just give you like the API to use the model to integrate it in your apps. But I know that Flux Dev, like they have an open source version and you can take
Okay.
it and try to fine tune it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure. But it's
Fantastic.
their it's like, yeah, they have better models now and they are not open source. So, because what
Okay.
I'm using in the platform is they're better, like it's the Schnell,
Right.
and it's super fast, like as well. Like the generation is in a second. You can create an AI model like in a second or two. Really, it's amazing
Wow.
with a prompt.
That's so
Yeah.
it's true to the name Schnell. I love Schnell is, for those listening who aren't aware, the German word for fast. And as far as I know, Black Forest Labs is a German startup, which is so, it makes me so
Really?
happy to see. Yeah, it makes me so
I
happy to
didn't
see
know
Germany
that.
like actually
Wow.
doing something nice once in a while. Okay, I love this deep dive. We've talked about so many things with fashion. You mentioned fashion is built using composable things like Supabase and Auth0 and Fal, RunPod. Uh, Given that this is the case, I have to ask. I have to ask the website or the platform that I use today. How much of that was built with V0?
Oh, yeah. So actually, not much of it, unfortunately. I mean, I'll tell you how I use V0. Okay. First of all, I love it. Like I go to it often, but I'm not really generated everything in V0. Like I'm just using it for kind of inspiration. For example, on our platform, I have this component of like displaying the result, and sometimes you can choose like to make 4 outputs. So
Right.
because I'm too lazy, for example, to code it myself, I go to V0 and I'm like, okay, give me this component that displays up to 4 images and you can like click on them and look at the results. And then it gives me kind of this skeleton. And then I take this skeleton and obviously I change it completely to my needs and to my design. So I'm using ChatCM also, which is amazing. And of course, my whole website and apps and everything is built with ChatCM. But I think I always take it to kind of my direction in a way. I'm not completely relying on it. I haven't tried to like generate a whole website with V0, like never. I don't know if people, I think people can already do that. It's improving also every day. Like they have new things. It's amazing. And it's free, which is also crazy. Like they have like this free tier. So yeah, but I don't use it as often, actually.
Do I understand that your pricing calculator came from V0? Or did you just make one for fun?
Yeah.
Is this the same one used on the fashion website?
Yeah. No, so actually, this one is it's a bit more complex and painful sometimes to code. Like these calculators, when you choose it, you move the numbers and things like that. So I did use V0 for that for the base. And then I took it and I tweaked it a little bit to fit my needs.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a base, it's like amazing.
Fantastic. And speaking of pricing for fashion, what is the pricing model? I assume it's a different model for the platform and for the API. Of course, we can go look at the website. We can do it right now. But there's people who are now invested. You know, it's like we're an hour in. They're like, oh, I want to use this, but what's it going to cost? So for the listeners, what is the pricing model for both the API and the platform?
So yeah, we decided to separate it because before that we thought about doing it all together. Like if you're subscribed to the platform, you get the API. But then we decided to separate because we saw that many developers want just the API and they have no value at all from the platform. So the platform currently it's a subscription model. You have like the basic plan, which is $19, and you get 200 image generations per month. And you have the Pro plan, which is $59, and you have unlimited generation through the platform, and you have the AI model generation that we're using Fal behind the scenes. So that's the main benefits, and of course, like more support and things like that. And the API, it's 0.04 per image, $0.04 per image per successful image generation. So yeah, and the minimum is 100. So it's like $4 just to start and playing with our
That's
API.
wild.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why
like the minimum we
for
could we could.
That sounds like it. 4 cents per image. Or not even, yeah, it is 4 cents. It's not
Yeah.
40 cents. That's right. Incredible. Wow. I feel like this is why I guess your API is so popular, is because it's so affordable. You could just build proofs of concept left and right and really keep playing until you have something or you don't. But I think that's such a great pricing model. We'll also put links to all of this in the show notes, of course. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about business. We've been talking about the technology. We talked about RunPod and Supabase and all of this. Let's talk about the business side. We kind of got here already talking about pricing. But are you are you a first-time founder?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It must be a very interesting journey. You must be
Very.
experiencing so
No,
many
it's
strange things.
amazing. You're evolving, you're experiencing everything, like you're learning so much about everything. But it's
Yeah.
also like because both of us are technical founders, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse in a way, that we don't know much about like the marketing side, business
Yeah.
side, let's say. All we want to do is like code and
Build
like
stuff.
being
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's challenging.
You've got to wear so many hats, and then suddenly things come at you from an unexpected way. So I have maybe two questions. We'll see how we go. The second question is, and I'll tell you now so you can start thinking of it. The second question is something we've asked literally every founder on the series, including Jay from SST, including Guillermo Rausch, including like everybody, and that is, if there was something you wish you knew when you started that maybe other entrepreneurs should know, and if this was codified in some type of document, here's things you have to know ahead of time. What would that be? We'll come back to that. I just wanted you to park that and start thinking about it already. But before that, I wanted to talk to you about something unique to you and Dan as first-time founders, where I saw this and my heart honestly went out to y'all, where Meta just stole your product. I saw a very long post on social media where they released this, I think it's called Pose, Sapiens. They released this
Sapiens.
open source model that does poses that you can use to try clothes on with. And you mentioned that it was actually your code that ended up, since the thing was open source, it ended up in their implementation. Can we talk about that? One from wow, they actually stole your code. What did that feel like? How did you respond to that, and how is it now?
Yeah, so I will explain exactly what happened because I mean, it's not like they stole our invention or anything. Like there was a paper on this human segmentation technology, which was really advanced and cool by Meta. It was open source. Of course, the paper is open source to everyone, but there was no code implementation to that paper. So Dan took like a weekend, I think, to just sit and write this code so that people can make something nice and open source and collaborative, with what Meta did. So he did, and it got pretty good responses. And the next day, suddenly we see that like he was casually checking if anybody else has done it as well, because I mean, it's natural. It's okay. It's something really, really new.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to be the first who put it out there, like the code implementation on Hugging Face. And I helped like with the front end part, like I designed all the way it looks, because Hugging Face spaces, sometimes they look a bit boring, like dull in a way, and there is a way to design them, like with Gradio and what they're using, like the component library that they're using. There is a way to make it prettier and more approachable to people. So that's where I helped as well. And then the next day, when he was casually checking if people did that, he saw that Meta, actually, I think the guy was one of the writers of the paper. But they just took it, like all of it, the exact code. You could even see in the commits, because on Hugging Face, you can see the history. So you saw like in the commits that they just removed our name and put their text instead. Yeah, it's all in that tweet. Like that tweet went really viral. I didn't even expect that.
With good reason, went viral.
Yeah, I hope. But Meta is doing a great job. They're open source, and we just wanted to collaborate, and all we wanted was a little credit that they took it from us, and there was none. And they also did like their own tweet. Like this guy, I think he tweeted about this as well, and it got viral. Like before I tweeted about it, that he published the code on Hugging Face, and yeah, it was just devastating to see that it's all of our work our design, the code, everything. And we tried to contact them, like even on LinkedIn, we tried to find people from Facebook, and people tried, like people from Facebook tried to support us, and they were like, okay, we'll talk to the guy, we'll try to do something. And so eventually what happened, he did put a credit, like taken from Fashn AI or something like that on the main page. But then again, he removed it, or he like tweaked it to taken from here, and then a link to us from here. And then I think eventually what happened is he completely removed it again, but at least they changed the whole code. Like they replaced it completely with their own like implementation. So at least
But
it's
that's
not,
still derived from yours, right?
I mean, now there is no similarity if you look at it now. But by the way, before that, and not, I mean, even when they gave us the credit, I think at some point they also removed the commit history, where you could see that they changed the name and everything that we wrote. So it was devastating. But at least, I got a lot of support, which is amazing. Like people DM'd me, and yeah, it was, we got through it. Let's just say it's over. And it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't want drama with like big companies. It's flattering,
Yeah.
maybe in a way as well. But I wish we could be just more collaborative and, yeah, open.
Yeah, I can see how it can be flattering, but at the same time, it's so weird from the other perspective, aka Meta's, right? Where they're doing something open source. It's actually good, but at the same time, they will not like credit a source.
Yeah, and
It, it,
somebody
it-
told us, like somebody approached us and said, "Yeah, I work at Meta, and it's not our policy. Like it's not our company's policy. We don't do that, and I will fix it. I will figure out what to do." But yeah, and the actual guy who did it, he also said that like, "Oh yeah, we were planning to adding your name, but we forgot," or something like that. And I mean, I don't
yeah,
know if I want to believe that or not, but you
yeah,
saw what happened, so yeah.
yeah. Wild. Well, I'm sorry I had to deal with that. I'm glad that there were positives to your business because of it. Meaning the support and the people actually came to your, aid and maybe as a consequence even learned more about fashion and the good work that y'all are doing. So I'm glad that there's a silver lining there.
Yeah.
Is that something that keeps y'all up at night? Like if Zalando or Zara or some large fashion company or even a tech company wanted to create your product and eat your lunch, they have far more resources than just the two of you do. How are you all prepared for that? What does that play on your
Yeah,
mind?
yeah.
What's that like?
We talk about it all the time because at any day, like somebody could just open source it and even have a better model than us and just put it out there. And yeah, that's why we are thinking about a lot of like other components in the business for like, okay, maybe we shouldn't rely just on virtual try-on. We can do many other things, and we can have like this amazing platform with amazing UI, user experience, or a great API experience that everyone can use. Pricing as well is a factor. I think currently I don't think there are many like companies that are available for commercial use of this technology. And there are companies who are doing virtual try-on. And obviously, we're not the only ones, and they're all great. Not all of them are available for commercial use. So that's why we wanted to kind of be almost the first that are making it. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
always, we always think about
on your
this.
mind.
Yeah,
I guess you need to find a moat, something that you just can't take from you.
exactly.
All right, let's talk about that second question now. And I'm really interested in your answer. You've had some time to passively think about it in the background between talking about this meta thing. Yeah, so again, you're an engineer that I think a lot of us ought to respect tremendously for building these four applications yourself as a team of one. Ridiculous in many ways. But as an engineer, we work with like things that are living standards, like the JavaScript language specification or the HTML. These are like living documents, living standards. They say the const keyword does this and the function keyword does that. If such a document existed for founders, technical founders, What do you think has to be in there? The living standard for founders.
So I think one of the first things is try to avoid burnout. Because it is really hard, I think, especially as a technical founder, when all you want to do is code all day and build things, you can burn out really fast. And you just have to take a day off for sure. And it's hard because I didn't go by it. I didn't do it, unfortunately. And I had a lot of breakdowns during this journey that I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. I can't do all of these things simultaneously, and it's all on me, and it's hard. So I think avoiding that by taking at least one day off per week to not do that, not code. Also, I think having people in a similar environment to you, like connecting with fellow founders, even if they're not from the same space, I think it's important to talk about the difficulties, like how difficult it is to really build something. And there are so many things that people don't, since you start the journey, it consists of so many components really to just do something and build something. And it's important to have a supportive system. And by the way, we don't really have it, unfortunately. I mean, we are on our own, basically. It's not like we don't live in San Francisco. We don't have a big communities of builders and enthusiastic people that build all day. So we try to connect with people online. So that's also really important. And also, I think be kind to others and, be humble and kind. Even if you're talking to somebody who could be your competition or whatever, just be collaborative, be nice, be kind, because I got burned by it many times during this journey. Somebody wanted to talk to us about the solution or the things that we do, and they promise you that they will connect you with this and that and blah, blah. And then after this conversation, they disappear. So, and then you end up with nothing. But we are really open to collaborating and okay, let's talk, let's discuss this, because it's also a very small space relatively, like the fashion tech, it's not very big still. So yeah, be good to others. That's the most important thing, I think.
I love that. And as you mentioned, I feel really convicted and almost guilty because there's times where I promise people something and then just disappear. But it's not intentional. It's just there's things happening and I literally just don't find the email in my inbox anymore.
Yeah, I try not to take it personally, but yeah.
Yeah, I can say that whoever is listening, whenever I've done this, it's never personal. I can already think of this one founder building a great. Yeah, I will go respond to her email after.
Yay.
But you mentioned these three things that I think if you zoom out, right, and look closely, and again, the three things are: one, try to avoid burnout by taking at least a day off; two, be kind to people; and three, you need a support system. You need a group of people. If I zoom out from these three, it sort of looks like they're all the same, and I don't know what the same thing is, but if you think about personality types, there's this thing called the dark triad, where there's these three character traits that just make you a sociopath. It sounds like these three are sort of the dark triad of founder life. And again, I'm speaking very abstractly, but I would love your thoughts on this. Because if you are working way too much and you're approaching burnout, maybe you're not sleeping, your diet is off the charts, you're not even exercising, you're not taking care of yourself, then you're probably not sleeping as well, which means you tend to see people as more hostile than they are. And then because of that, you just avoid people. So you've cut off your support system. And also because you see people as more hostile than they actually are, you probably not going to be very kind and very nice because there's all these self-defense and protection mechanisms. I don't know. Do you think there's truth to that? I do know for sure that in the science, in the medicine, that there's plenty of evidence when you don't sleep. There was this one experiment where people were deprived of sleep and they were shown faces of people. And they said, rate the face from angry to friendly, 0 to 10. And then of course another group was not deprived of sleep. And of course the group that did sleep saw neutral expressions as neutral and saw friendly expressions as friendly, as you would expect. But the groups that were deprived of sleep saw everyone as suspicious and bad, negatively. And so with all of that combined, what are your thoughts? Do you think these three are just one? And do you think the one takeaway is take care of yourself?
Yeah, I think it's definitely everything affects everything. And yeah, personally, I try to have a healthy lifestyle. Like one thing I don't give up on is going to the gym. That's very important. It's like mental health, really. Um, but other than that, I mean, it's hard to diverge from it, like to not work all day when you're a founder. It's really hard because you do want to constantly work on your product. And and the work is endless if you don't have employees, especially. So it is just important to take care of yourself. It's really true, like to sleep well, to eat well, take breaks, even if you don't want to. You have to make yourself, and you have to just stop sometimes. And eventually, it's all better because you will think better the next day, right? If you're taking a break, like you will find the solutions instantly and you will fix your bugs in a second. Like if you just rested a a little bit. It just happened to me like a few days ago.
Wow.
So I'm trying to take it easier now, because we did have this kind of like really, really intense period now, like with the launch and everything, like we're with trying to make everything like ready, taking care of users, fixing bugs. But yeah, we are trying to take our time and make it a bit
Fantastic.
easier. Yeah.
If we talk about, you mentioned something so profound. You said you have to make yourself take a break, even if you don't want to. I have a great forcing function. It's called my wife. Yesterday, I was in a very deep work hole, and out of nowhere, she texts me and says, "Hey, do you want to get hot pot? Do you want to get dinner at this really great Asian place?" And I said, "You know what? Yes." Because I did want to spend time with her. But also I wanted to finish the work. And I think this is not a unique experience where you're just like doing something and you're like, oh, I'm so in the zone. I'm locked in. I'm in flow. And I want to continue, but at the same time, I have to peel myself away. Now, in the case of Hot Pot and my wife, like it was difficult, but that made it easier because I was like, you know what? I haven't eaten in like 6 hours and I want to, this Asian food is good. And also my wife. And so that helped. I'm curious if you can speak to things that listeners and you use to make it easier to peel yourself away from the keyboard in moments where it's very challenging.
Yeah, so first of all, imagine like working with your spouse, like with your husband, and both of us are in it.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's crazy. Sometimes he has to pull me like from the computer. He's like, "No, we do this tomorrow. Like, just go. Let's go to sleep." So it's more difficult, I guess, when your spouse, like the closest person to you, you both are working on the same thing and you're both invested into it so much. So it's hard for me to find that force, to be honest. Like, I think having a dog maybe would help, and then it would make me go outside to walk the dog, and take a break, because otherwise, wow, it's hard. But you have lunch. You always have lunch. So then that's when you're taking a little break. And then sometimes we have a coffee break when we just sit and talk about things. I mean, usually we talk about work, but we're trying to rest for like 30 minutes. Yeah.
Engineers and developers are so creative and cool because like one of the best engineer I know, his name is Fabien Bernard. He's like us, right? He gets locked in, and his way is to introduce friction in the thing. You see that we always do lunch and we do coffee. His way of peeling himself from the computer is to introduce friction to the coffee making process. So he bought a, it's like a hand fully manually operated espresso machine. So you
Wow.
like apply, it's not an AeroPress, it's an actual espresso machine, no electricity. It's got a huge crank and you've got to use all your muscle to like
Wow.
and so yeah, and so he's got beans that he grinds it like it's a whole ceremony. Similarly, I have an uncle who his morning routine is he gets like wheat grains and he grinds it into flour and then makes bread for breakfast. So
Wow.
people
Okay.
introduce these weird things, but it's all out of a way of protecting against burning out. And so for those listening, those are some ways you can also maybe take advantage of that. Finally, and this is maybe the last question. Everybody says do not work with your partner or your spouse because then a lot of people say it's because you run out of things to talk about and you're no longer just partners, but you're like business people. I've actually done that. So my wife and I did work together at the same company at Zeta for I think a year, 2 years, and it was great because we hated the bad stuff together and we loved the good stuff together. And honestly, it was nice to have a comrade at home to share in the experience. Because oftentimes, especially like in founder CEO series on the podcast, a lot of the founders have mentioned it's extremely lonely. And so to have that,
Yeah.
there's positives. And so my lived experience of working with a spouse is just good.
But did you work
And
like on
when
the same, like in the same division and the same?
no,
Okay,
no, I was
that
in DevRel. She
helps.
was in events.
Okay.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I would
First
love
of
to
all,
get
that
your thoughts
helps.
because
Yeah. Because
yeah,
Dan and I are doing very different things eventually. I mean, now we're starting to maybe work on the same things, which is like marketing and things like that. But in terms of the technicalities, he has no idea what I'm doing, like with all these apps. I have no idea what he's doing, like in his code, like to train the models and everything. So yeah, first of all, that really helps. But I would say it's one of the easiest things, like to work with your spouse, really, because everyone tells me, like, how do you do that? How can you work together? Like, I cannot stand working with my husband. And I think it's wrong. I don't know. I think it's the best partner you can have in that sense because you know each other so well. So you know each other's strengths and weaknesses and work ethic and limitations, and you are not shy like to share your struggles and talk about things. So it works so well for us. I mean, God forbid, I hope it will continue that way, but yeah, I think it's the best business partner you can have because it's like a very good co-founder. That's what you're looking for in a
exactly.
co-founder, right? So yeah, it works. It works great.
That's so great. Yeah, and if you've planned a wedding, you already understand like each other's skills and awesome. I'm so happy that this is also a common thing because I feel like the broad narrative is don't do it, but as
Yeah.
someone who has done it and you've done it, it seems really great. And at some point you co-found a family if that's a shared value and it that's also
Yeah.
great. So,
Yeah.
with that, listen, it's been such a pleasure talking to you about so many topics and learning. Well, first of all, just learning that it's a company of two people. What? That's absolutely insane. And then a company that's self-funded, also absolutely insane. And that you've built every front-end property of the company, and your partner Dan has built all of the machine learning. It's just a uniquely weird but such an impressive episode. And so, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much for coming and sharing all of this with us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you do in your podcast, and it was amazing for me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Aya Bochman. I hope you learned, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you marvel at what just two driven people can do together as much as I did. I hope if you're a developer, a builder, a hacker, an independent person, hope you feel empowered about what you can do, what you can accomplish by composing some technologies together and truly building with passion. If you're interested in fashion, even trying it out, then there are relevant links in the show notes. I encourage you to check them out. If you're learning from and or enjoying this content, then a great way to support it with really no cost, if you're watching on YouTube, is to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Also leave a comment. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, then if you leave up to a 5-star review, that would also help make this content discoverable to more people. And really, that's the name of the game, right? There's valuable information here, and we want to make that available to everybody. So I'd invite you to do that. Actually, if you really want to help, share the episode on social media, on any platform you choose. That would definitely get in front of people and make sure that this information is accessible to them, which may help change some lives. That's hope. That's the hope, right? That's why I do this. In any case, thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you for being a part of the podcast, and most importantly, thank you for your interest in engineering.